So,
Okay, so I'm Joyce Clark. You guys already got introduced to John.
I'm John Clark.
And so we were asked to do this talk, and I have to say that initially I didn't know what to say. So it was kind of an interesting exploration as to how Buddhism has really affected and the sort of key points that have affected our relationship. And so that's basically what we're going to talk about, mostly through the use of stories, I would say. And over to you, John.
I got introduced to transcendental meditation when I was 13. Our whole family took it. And I was a 13-year-old kind of semi-ADD kid running around. And from the experience of this one teacher, I slowly learned how to basically concentrate my mind. And what was most profound for me is when we drove to the teacher's house, and there was a final ritual. It was just a candle, and he said a few words, some chanting. And I remember my dad had already been there. He was waiting in the car, and I remember jumping into the car and just so happy. It was just really stuck with me by having the mind concentrated, how good that felt, how relaxing it felt. And so, and then the next big thing happened when I was 16, as I read Suzuki's book, Sunru Suzuki, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. So it's a Zen book. And it had a very big impact on me for learning to do what I'm doing, to be present with what I was doing. So he would say, when I walk, I walk. When I eat. It just sounded kind of simple, but so that really made an influence on me. That was my couple of my first earlier experiences with Buddhism.
So I was young also when I started kind of having I guess I would call myself a young seeker. So I was raised, my mom was United and my dad was Anglican, or maybe it was the other way around. So we moved around a lot, and so depending on what town we were in and what church was closest, we'd go United or Anglican. So I didn't really have a firm tradition. And then I got kind of, I guess, focused a little bit on the fact that we're here and then we die. And I had a lot of questions. And so I started going to different churches, and my parents were very supportive. So I went to Catholic churches with my neighbor. I went, what was it called? It's a Pentecostal, that's right. I listened to a radio show, and I went to a Pentecostal church, and I still felt like I didn't really get the answers that I was looking for. So then after I'd finished my degree and done some traveling, I then went and took a Western religions course because I thought, that'll help me to understand. And I still felt kind of lost. And so then I took an Eastern religions class, and that was up here at the University of Calgary. And it was when we were studying about Buddhism, and I thought, this is actually how I think and how I am in the world. And I was very curious to go further with it because I felt that I understood my thoughts and my actions, but I didn't know how I could change things. So sometimes I would do things that were not what I wanted to do, the behaviors that I didn't want to do, and I didn't understand how to change that. And so that was probably what led me to inquire further. And so I'm mostly well-behaved now. But it was just I just didn't understand why I got myself into trouble with relationships or intending to do something, and it didn't work out that way. John and I met in junior high and high school, but we did not date then. We didn't start dating till we were in our mid-20s. And even though we sort of started off really loving traveling and windsurfing, but we also had this real connection about learning about the mind and talking about Buddhism and looking at the effects of meditation, because we were both meditating at that time, and sharing books and ideas. And so that's still basically happening today. Not the windsurfing, but the talking. One of the books that I read in the early days was Living Buddhist Masters by Jack Kornfield. He talked about these different people who were teaching at that time. That would have been in the 80s. And so through that, we got like the address of this place called Wat Pa Nanachat in Thailand. And so that was when we had our first live teaching. And so the head monk was a Canadian monk, and then there was a visiting Australian monk. And so that kind of gave us a taste of that live teaching, which was really exciting. And then when we came back from our travels, we started an evening class with Shirley Johannesson. She also goes by the name Jayanta. I don't know if anybody knows her here. And so I really learned about loving kindness from Shirley. And I'm pretty sure she taught me other things, but that was the piece that really stuck with me. And so I'll just give you a little story that kind of exemplifies how this really had an effect on me. So I was getting ready for work, and John and I had an argument about something, and I don't remember what it was, or I'd tell you what it was, but I don't remember what it was, but I was mad. And so I'm in the car and I'm driving, but I was thinking that Shirley was going to maybe ask me to do the loving kindness recitation that she would do at the beginning of her class. And some people had it memorized. And so I was worried that she was going to ask me to say it, and I didn't have it memorized. So there I am in my car, multitasking. So red light, I read this loving kindness meditation, really brief little meditation. Light turns green, back into driving. And I want to rehash this problem that I'm having, this argument that I've had with John. And there was no anger whatsoever. It was gone. I was kind of looking for it. I wanted to still be mad at him, but it was just, I knew the story, I knew what the problem was, but it just took all the kind of emotion that was negative emotion, took it away. And that was a pretty profound experience for me. So you'll hear more about loving kindness in a little bit. Over to you, John.
So at that time, early 90s, I guess, what I really got from her was learning how to label, or they say note, thoughts. It's a very good way to just kind of get in the realm of your thoughts, to be present, to just label, note, anger, or whatever it is. It's a very good, when you're eating, eat. And she really emphasized that, but it's a very good platform with which to get in there and be present. And so I would remember the story, like just practicing that. And we often drive up to mountains on the weekend. And so I would be gripping the wheel like this, usually kind of angry or anxious or something from the week of family and work. And so I just kept coming back, just like we were coming back to our breath, I kept coming back to my grabbing the wheel, steering, just grabbing like this, on and on and on. And as it was about an hour and a half drive, 40-minute drive. And that practice, it was amazing, just like when we're meditating now, if you just keep coming back to, in this case, mindfulness of driving, the problem wasn't there anymore. It would just, I'd be more relaxed, and I'd also understand it better. It was very good learning for me. And over I would return to my feeling the wheel and be free from being free and freer from delusional thoughts, just about it rather than being present. So sitting quietly in meditation is another thing I really learned is labeling anger. And so sitting quietly in meditation is a very good very good time to just see what's up, what's going on in your mind. In this case, it was I tried doing an experiment, so I was angry at Joyce. I know it's hard to believe.
It sounds like we were getting mad at each other a lot, but really we don't.
I just remember, so I went to the basement and was meditating, and I decided to do an experiment that this is about me. This is my problem. It's not me. Of course, I was fighting. It's really her problem. I'm angry at her. It's her problem. No, this is the experiment. It's my problem. And I just kept coming back and back and back to it. And so, and then I felt lighter and lighter, and I went upstairs, and I didn't have that anger anymore, and she's doing her thing, and she didn't even know what was going on in my story in my brain, right? And so I didn't react with her in any way, and quite interesting. And if there was something to talk about, I'd talk about it with a clearer mind. And so that I just remember that experience of experimenting with some of these techniques. And let me see here. Yeah, so my unhappiness was largely due to me. It just was. It's my problem. I'm taking ownership for it. And yeah, that's that story. Memorable.
So Shirley also steered us towards other teachers for week-long retreats. And that was really, kind of one of those turning points, I would say. And we all have turning points in our lives. We have these things that happen to us and we go, yes, from that I learned this, and then I changed and did these other things. And so a couple of things. One is I want to say that as a couple that are meditating, there's sort of two things that really worked for us. One was in being able to progress our practice. So one was being supportive of each other when we're doing our sitting, and also when we're on meditation retreat. So mostly we would go on retreat separately because we have 3 boys and active life, and it's hard for 2 people to be away at the same time and have your children farmed out everywhere. And so being supportive of the practice itself, and then also using the skills that we were developing to work on ourselves and how we are in relation to other people, in particular ourselves. So so this kind of honoring of the time, because in a growing family for us, it just seemed like time was at a premium. But we always exercised and we always meditated. And I think that sort of helped us to stay healthy and, peaceful, more so than, I don't know, just seems like there was a really busy time there for about, 25 years.
Yeah.
And I generally meditated in the morning and John meditated in the evening. So that kind of balanced it out in how it worked for us.
So the first really long retreat we went on was down to California to see Ayakima. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of her. She's a German nun that was head of a monastery in Sri Lanka, and she's recommended by Shirley. And so off we went to Santa Cruz, and was it Santa Cruz? Near Santa Cruz?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was interesting because as we went in, I got a call from my grandmother had died. And so just after I got told it's a silent retreat, which they usually are, and so this is my last information, that she lived in Calgary here too, and so this retreat turned out to be one of a deep very deep understanding of impermanence. And because Akima was dying of liver cancer. Interesting, the teacher. She was a brilliant lady. And so it was just all learning about that key important thing about our lives and about our thoughts, that everything's always changing. And this can be a real source of our suffering because we think things are permanent. And really, nothing's permanent really in a way, and everything's fairly empty, but So we just felt so good after that retreat and came back, and what I remember is walking across the bridge and just so happy. And I truly felt like it would be okay to die. And it was just such a freedom that you can experience when you accept that things are impermanent. And that it's just a natural tendency. We are beings that get diseased, and we are beings that die. It's just our reality, and that's it's an important thing to face, and that was really that feeling I had from that retreat. I think that was the main thing there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I also think about the value of impermanence, and when I'm sitting in...
How do you define impermanence?
Yeah, it's many not staying the same.
Right.
Things something that doesn't stay the same,
Okay.
or something that is not inherently the same, is something that's...
change.
Yeah, it's just all about change, yeah.
So is that a reference to our own lives, to our own thoughts, to what?
To everything.
Where's the connection? I don't...
Oh.
You're losing me here.
Oh, okay, so...
It seems to be a big topic here, impermanence, changefulness. Like, how does that fit in with the meditation? And
I think I might answer that in my next little bit,
right.
hopefully.
Okay.
And we can talk more if we are not answering your question, okay?
All right.
So one of the things that happens in a meditation practice, which maybe even happened for people sitting here for the 15 minutes, is little things arise. So I had an experience one time that I'll talk about that kind of gave me a little bit more of the insight into how to deal with things changing, and also how changing is a good thing. So I was on a retreat with a fellow named Joseph Goldstein, and we're mentioning these names because a lot of these people have written books and they teach retreats, and they're very wise, and so this is why I'm name dropping here. So it was a summer retreat. It was a 10-day retreat near here. And I was sitting, so in the summer, there was this fly that came in, and it had been buzzing around, and then it's on my cheek. And so I'm kind of thinking, like, my impulse is to swat it away. So I intervene, and I'm thinking, no, I want to try and sit still. And I also want to sit still with things that are not necessarily pleasant, which happens a lot in our lives. Things aren't always pleasant, much as we would like them to be. And so with things that are pleasant or unpleasant, we can grab towards them or push them away. And then there's another alternative, which is just to actually have a sense of equanimity towards things that change. So in this particular case, I've got this little fly, and it's crawling around my cheek. And I started to actually appreciate that it was kind of pleasant. At first it was unpleasant because it's a fly, and then it was pleasant because it was just kind of this light little tickling. And so I'm just kind of enjoying this little tickling that's going on, but then he starts going towards my nose. And then I'm thinking, oh no, if he goes up my nose, I mean, I can't handle that. Like, I can't do that. That's just too much. And so then I've got this anxiety, and I want to kind of intervene with this fly. And so now my mind is all involved, but still it's just this little tickling that's going on. And so I stayed with it actually until this fly, he actually climbed up my nose, and then he flew away. But it was one of those experiences that I could feel how much I was wanting to push away this experience. And it changed without me even needing to intervene with it, which is a little bit of the point about impermanence, is that sometimes it feels like we're stuck in a situation that it feels like things can't move, like all the situation that we're in has something concrete to it, but it doesn't actually. And so even if you look at things on a real microscopic level, we can see that things are actually in a constant state of change. And there's something that's very comforting about that. Let me just see if there was anything else that I wanted to say about that. Oh, okay, I wanted, are you good with what I've said so far?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So John later went on a retreat with another name dropper, Bhante Gunaratna, on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. He's written a number of really good books, and this one was a focus on feelings. And so John and I and the kids, so my 3 boys, John was there, and we went up to Kananaskis, and John joined us, and en route he went to a store up at the Kananaskis village there and bought all these really thoughtful presents for us. And so we went into, he was giving us these gifts, and he was just, his presence was incredible. Like, he was just so full of gratitude for the family. He was so filled with this sense of peacefulness, and it was palpable. Like, it was just this state of being. And my 13-year-old son said to me, I want what he's got. And he pushed and pushed to go on to do he wanted to do a meditation retreat. He wanted to do one right then and there, actually. But so I arranged for him to do a weekend retreat here in Calgary. So we did a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and then arranged for him to do a retreat later that summer. And he's the son, this particular son, our oldest. He's also he was a monk for a year, and he still has a very daily practice, and he's 36 now. But anyway, this was this retreat that John went on, and now over to you, John.
So it was a treat actually on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is Satipatthana Sutta, if anybody's interested. And there was only 12 of us. They're all pretty seasoned practitioners. And but the story that I really caught me there was one of the foundations is foundations on feelings. That's one of the 4, to understand your feelings. And a key teaching there is feelings change. They go from good to bad to neutral, and they kind of cycle back and forth. They're not permanent. And so I was sitting there. It was November, I think, and it was cold, and I was just meditating and really trying to relax and feeling pretty good. And a fan came on, a real industrial fan came on, and just, oh, Jesus, that's irritating. Really, it's like, stop. Someone's got to shut this thing off. Anyway, and meditating. Comes on again. God damn, that thing's irritating. And then slowly, as the day went on, I noticed, because you're quite aware, is that it was neutral. There was my perception of the irritant was, it didn't matter. It was just neutral. And then that went on, and then the next day, meditating, came on, there it is again. And it was positive. Like it was my friend or something to grab onto, or something. I don't know why. And it cycled. And I thought, be careful. So careful with your perceptions, John, because you might be mad and angry about something one day, next day it changes. So it's kind of empty. Things are often really empty of yourself and meaning. They change and they cycle. So that was key for me. Let me see.
Joseph Goldstein.
Oh, yeah. So another big thing I learned about is a key thing from Joseph Goldstein that I went on a retreat. I think 2002, but is to watch where you're coming from. So this was a retreat where there was a little piece of paper before you went in. It was silent, and you wrote down something that was important in your life that you want to work on. And couldn't think of anything. And I just kind of opened up. Oh yeah, okay. My son, my youngest son. And so he had has a growth disorder, and so at the time he was. So it must have been earlier in 2002. So anyway, he was quite small for his size, and it was called Russell Silver syndrome, and so it was really kind of bothering me because you could treat this growth disorder with growth hormone, and so I was really we went to a foundation that talked about Russell Silver syndrome and growth hormone as a treatment, and Joyce didn't think it was a good idea, but I kind of wanted to, and so I was really looking into it a lot and very disturbed by the fact that we could maybe do something so that he would be a regular height. And so could have been as short as 4'5", 4'6", or they were predicting probably on average he'd be maybe 5 foot. And so anyway, I went into a meeting with Joseph Goldstein himself. Super cool guy, relaxed. He's part of the IMS Center in Barrie, Massachusetts, and a very interesting story for a man. But it was so cool, and he looked at what I said, and we were talking about it. And he was paused, and he says, "Well, watch where you're coming from with whatever you do. Why are you doing what you're doing?" Very interesting thing to do. And I realized that I didn't want him to be short. A short little 5 foot, or a little 4'6" person, and I didn't think that was something socially that would be a good thing. That was kind of where I was coming from. And but then I started to really look at it, and I realized, and I read a lot about it, and I realized, I don't know if that's the healthiest thing to every time you inject him every day, and you're like, something wrong with you, you got to inject you, because he was healthy otherwise, right? And I kind of thought, oh no, and I slowly shifted, and then I wasn't an advocate of growth hormone, and I let that go because I knew where it focused, but through a lot of deep meditation, and so he's now 5'6". So he's just, and he's a super cool guy, and didn't send him the wrong signals, So.
And there were some things about that situation that were risks, and so it was kind of that.
Yeah.
Which one? Yeah. Which one do we do?
And so that retreat in particular was very much a good retreat for. One of the ladies said there to focus on your stomach rising and falling. I said, I'm having trouble connecting with my emotions, right? And rather than focusing on the breath, I focus on my my stomach. So I just remember we were in the forest and it just calmer and calmer, just kind of dropping down into my stomach, and then there he was, and there the emotions flowed. It was very, very strong connection with the sadness, what I was going through. And that was through focusing on the stomach. And then it kind of, after that, just was cleared through just simply awareness of it. It's kind of it's like a miracle a little bit sometimes, just through letting go and being there present with problems and not really trying to fix them, just focusing and on your feelings and your awareness. And Joseph Goldstein said it's kind of like bubbles. Your thoughts are like bubbles coming up and popping, and they're just come and they go. And so he wrote in my journal, happy watching your bubbles. Like that. But I was going to say something about that. Yeah, it's your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts are like the weather. They change. They're impermanent. They change and they cycle. And that's what over to you. Okay,
over to me. So I found that I went on a number of retreats that focused on loving kindness. So one of the things that the Buddha identified as kind of the afflictions, I guess, is greed, hatred, and delusion. The things that lead us to some of our suffering as humans. And so the antidote to greed, hatred, and delusion is generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom or clarity. And those are really simplistic terms to describe a lot of things. But these loving kindness retreats, so there's one that I went on that was 10 days. And basically what you do is you initially are sending loving kindness towards yourself. And so we spent an entire day doing that. So we would do this little saying that was, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may my heart be filled with love, may I be peaceful, may I have ease of well-being, may I live in safety. So that's the basic piece. There's some expanded versions of that. And then, so you would do it as you were breathing. So inhale, may I be healthy, exhale, may I be healthy. And you would repeat that 3 times. Inhale, healthy, exhale, healthy, inhale, healthy. So like that. And then you would then, so that was day 1. Day 2, we started directing it towards somebody that's easy to love. And so mine was usually directed towards John. And then, so we did that for a day. And then you go towards more neutral people, towards your teachers. And then kind of at the end, you go towards towards the difficult person. Doing this process, so my neutral person, one of my neutral people was my neighbor across the street. I didn't really know her very well. I knew who she was, I knew her name, I knew her kids' names, but no, I didn't really know her very well. I came back on Halloween, and I'd spent a number of days doing this. Anyway, I saw her, and I was like, hi! And I remember the look on her face was just kind of, she was really startled. And I just had all this loving feeling towards her, but I didn't realize how much that had changed just by doing this simple reciting and reciting. Also, when we were walking, doing a walking meditation, has anybody done walking meditation here? Yeah, lots of people. So we would do this, I'm going to demonstrate it actually. So we would do this thing. So we would go, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may my heart be filled with love, may I be peaceful, may I have ease of well-being, may I live in safety. And then you repeat that with the next foot. So you just keep repeating that over and over again as you're walking. So you walk really slowly and you get these words in your head. And then I found that when I went to sleep at night, those were the words in my head. And when I woke up in the morning, those were the words in my head. So this practice, I actually do this, as I said to you, Phil, just fairly recently. I will do this practice towards myself and maybe towards one other person or a neutral person or somebody that I love and care about deeply, or maybe even a difficult person. I will do this at the beginning of most of my meditations. So I don't have to take as long with it if I don't want to, or I could spend the whole time doing that meditation. One of the things that I pay attention to is when I skip off. So let's say I'm doing it, may I be healthy. And then I start thinking about something else. And I'm like, okay, no, back to what I was doing. So inhale, may I be healthy. Exhale, may I be healthy. And then I start thinking about something. And I'm like, why do I keep skipping off? Oh, actually, I don't feel like I'm being all that healthy. And so there might be something that is derailing me and I haven't really recognized it. So I actually use that as a little bit of a kind of a check-in as to how I'm doing. One of the other things that I like to do is to use right speech. And so as much as possible, choosing the right time, the right intention, and saying things that are true and not like gossip or slander or something like that. So there's this in the Buddha's, the Eightfold Path. Is anybody familiar with Eightfold Path? Yeah, people are nodding. So I really like to use right speech, and that has also been really helpful for us as a relationship. And so you can have difficult conversations with people, choosing the right time. Sometimes for me, the right time might not be right when something is immediately happening. I'm more likely to take a day or so to, go further with the conversation so that it's not so emotionally charged, and maybe I'm more able to use right speech if I have a little bit of time away from the need for a difficult conversation. So that pause really helps me. I was just going to say that one of the things that I thought was always interesting was how our children reacted towards our meditation practice. So I remember one time I was meditating outside in the summer, and I was sitting under a tree, and John was looking after the kids, and I heard these little feet approaching me, little quiet little feet, and then this little voice and this whispering into my ear, "Mommy, I don't know where Ruffy is." Ruffy was our dog. And I said, "Okay, go ask Daddy." So then I'm feeling the breeze, and I can hear the bugs, and I can feel the warmth of the sun. And then about 5 minutes later, these little feet approach me again. "Mommy, I found Ruffy, but I can't find Yogi," our other dog. "Go ask Daddy." And so one of the things that I cherish about that little story is that I was really present for it. And I think that that's one of the things that has happened throughout our lives and raising our children and having these fulfilling careers is I'm present for it. And I'm not just present for the nice parts, I'm present for all of it. And I think that's really been super important for me. I'm going to tell you one more a story of one of my kids, and then I think I'm done. Okay, so I remember driving with one of my sons, and I make some comment like, it'd be nice if you used your turn signal. And then we drive along, and then I'm making some comment about somebody else, and it's like, "Come on, buddy." And I'm chatting this way to these people who don't know that I'm chatting to them, and kind of mad at all the other drivers, And my son said, "Mom, have you been meditating lately?" Actually, no, I haven't. And he said, "Well, it shows." And it's interesting. So he's our son who's 36 now, and he said to me just in February, he said, "Mom, I really appreciate that you taught me how to be a peaceful driver." And so that was actually kind of fun. But I do find, like, even now, most of the time I'm pretty peaceful driving, but sometimes this chatter comes back, and I use that as a reminder. It's like, okay, what's going on, Joyce? What's happening? And maybe it's about meditating, or maybe it's that something's bothering me, and I'm kind of lashing out in this it's kind of a simple little way. It doesn't really hurt anybody in a sense, but it's kind of indicative that there's something going on, and I probably need to stop that. So anyway, if you see me down McLeod Trail with a smile on my face, you know I'm doing well.
So we're in concluding remarks now. I remember along the way realizing that there's no better person to practice with than your partner or your spouse or your key person in your life. And just to not ever forget that. They're right there every day. So no better person to learn how to love better, no better person how to practice right speech with right action. And were you going to say something?
Well, and I was just going to say that, I think that there's quite a lightness to our relationship. We're able to laugh a lot, and be present for all of the things that go on in a complex life, right? Life can get complex a lot of times. And I appreciate these foundational pieces. What we tried to give you tonight was just some of these key moments that sort of changed the way that we did things, and potentially point you towards people that might be able to, you could read some of their books or listen to some of their talks. Everybody that we've mentioned, with the exception of Shirley Johannesson, has written books and does talks that you can listen to and that sort of thing. So
Joy, you can increase your joy
yeah.
through being present, and you can also decrease your suffering and your unhappiness. And to never forget that happiness and peace is always right there. You just have to let the weather clear and see it. And just let go, let be. Okay.
So now we're going to throw it open to questions and answers. Don't be embarrassed to ask a question, because I'm sure the person beside you is thinking the same thing and is waiting for you to ask the question. We asked you to limit them to what we've been talking about tonight or a mindfulness-related topic. It's perfectly fine, but this is an educational forum, and really we're not qualified as therapists to really deal with any personal issues that you might have, and we would ask that you reserve that for your own private time. So ask any question you'd like. If you could keep it direct and succinct, that would be helpful so that everybody else could have an opportunity. When you ask the question, I'll repeat it, mainly just so that we will hear it on the recording.
We can ask you too, any questions?
Sure.
What is right speech? I don't know what that is.
So the question is, what is right speech?
So right speech, so the Buddha laid out the mind. Do you know about the Eightfold Path? Have you ever heard about this? Okay, so that's something you may want to Google, is the Eightfold Path. And so he described these different components that he said lead to a happier life, and happier in the sense of, being able to develop more of that equanimity, and maybe a more peaceful state of mind as opposed to an agitated state of mind. So one of these, of the Eightfold Path, is right speech. And with right speech, so you look at the content of the speech, so not being about gossip or, something where you're talking about somebody that's not there, something that you know or believe is to be true, that you're delivering it at the right time, and that you're delivering it in a way that is not created to agitate, and with the right intention. Yeah. So, and it kind of lays out those characteristics, and it's very interesting to hold to that. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's nice to have little guidelines. The Buddha was really into lists. So are you familiar with some of that? Yeah, so he'll have like all these different categories of things, and this is one of them. Okay.
Do you know what equanimity, have you ever heard that? Or, yeah. That's a key one in looking at the world.
At what point would you say you're in a meditation and you're paying attention to sound, sensations of whatever around you, that's what you're focusing on, and at what point do you interrupt your meditation in order to respond to your environment? So in other words, if the fly had gone up your nose, what would you have done?
So do you want to repeat the question?
Sure. So if you're in a meditation, and I'm assuming that you're maybe focusing on your breath, that's what I would be assuming? Or?
Earlier, I was listening to the dripping,
Mhm.
right? That was what I was focusing.
Yeah. And then
9.
And then whether or not, when do you decide that you're going to intervene with something maybe that's going on in the environment?
Right.
Or also is it maybe that, let's say you have a focused awareness and then thoughts come up. In other words, something comes into your meditation that takes you away from your anchor, and what do you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach that? Is that what you're asking?
Sure, yes.
So in answer about the fly, exactly that part of the question. So if that had gone up my nose, I would have definitely intervened and moved my hand and tried to get that fly away before it went up, truly. But I think that you raise a really good point, because there's different components to meditation. So one is concentration, where you're staying with one thing. And another part of it is where you are paying attention to things as they arise. Both components are totally fine. If what you are doing is a concentration meditation, so where you're trying to just stay with one thing, sometimes you get kind of narrow in your focus, and that's totally okay. Other times you can meditate and you're hearing sounds, and then you're noticing the tickling of the fly, and then you're noticing that you're thinking about something, and you can label these things or note them. So do you remember at the beginning, John was talking about noting? So you could it could be like hearing, and you could use that word, or you can just notice what it is that you're hearing. And then you can go back to your breath, which is your anchor. And then something else arises and you go back to your anchor. And that's kind of what we're doing the whole time. So one of the aspects to meditation is remembering to go back to your anchor. So reminding yourself that that's what you can do. Does that help? Okay.
I can go into a flow state too, like where you're just letting it happen. There's nothing more to do. And you just can just be aware of what happens. And that's a good sign that you're in the present, and you don't have to be concentrated on one object. You just kind of go with the flow.
So describe that for me.
So that means kind of being aware of what's happening at that moment.
Give me an example.
Well, if you're sitting meditating and you're listening to water, right, and then a thought comes in, right, you have a thought about something, that you're aware of that thought, and then you might have an itch, and you scratch your itch, but you know you're doing that. You know that you're aware of your thought. But you got to be fairly grounded to flow like that. And then, if you have pain in a joint or something, and you're concentrating on your breath, let's say, you can move your leg, and you can be aware of moving your leg. So there's no real rules.
You're just doing that mindfully, that intervention.
Yeah, you're aware, and the senses are an extremely good way to be aware. Like, someone says be in the present. Well, what does that mean? And I spent a long time trying to figure that one out. And I know the Buddha said to be aware of your sphere of senses. So it's easier to grab onto your eyesight. It's easier to be aware of hearing. And so when you want to be present anywhere, doing anything, the senses are a very good way to be present. To feel your stomach, let's say, for example, or to hear someone talking, or to hear sounds. or a sense. It's easier to grab onto that. So that kind of answers your question a little bit.
I think,
Sorry.
go on.
I was gonna say, or even to go to that further, being aware of what those external sensory items evoke in you emotionally.
Yeah.
The triggers, yeah.
That's a key thing. Like you can be a little bit scientific about it to break them out. You have feelings, and then you've heard something, or you have a thought, and then there's feelings, emotions, and you start becoming clearer. So you have clarity about your sensory, about your senses, and with equanimity, it can be good or bad. It doesn't really matter if that happens or doesn't happen, or if you like the sound or you don't like the sound. You have equity. It's okay. So you can be present with it, but you got to be able to be concentrated and be clear, and you also have that equanimity, and then you can begin to kind of unpack, things like the ephemeral nature of thoughts. You can start unpacking your emotions from your thoughts, and it's just a process of, once you learn to concentrate, which you can practice doing all through the day. When you're walking, practice concentrating on the feeling of your feet, or when you're driving, practice. When you're standing in a line, just practice concentrating. It's kind of, you have to have that component to be there. And then you got to be okay with the things the way they are, good or bad, equanimity, and then so.
And I think one of the things about being present with these sensations, what's going on in our mind or in our body or what's going on around us, is that it's kind of comforting to be with that instead of trying to project things that are going to be going on in the future, which goes into this huge unknown. I mean, there's so many variables going on. And then even looking at the past, which can be a little bit muddy, and there's this calmness, I find, that comes from being anchored in these very present moment things, thoughts, feelings, just kind of, this is what's happening right at this moment, and not necessarily needing to dive into future stories about that emotion or past stories about that emotion. It's just like, this is what I'm experiencing, and what does that feel like? Does that help?
You begin to understand too that your thoughts aren't necessarily reality. Often they're not. It's delusion often. So it's what's real, what's not real. Because what I know, we think our thoughts are real. That's our world. Well, it's not really true. Most of the thoughts, we have different instructors say different things, but one of them says this is mostly bullshit, your thoughts, right? And some can be accurate. You've got to follow them. But don't just always think that those bubbles of thoughts in your heads are reality. Reality is your senses. It's what's happening right now. And that's why it's so comforting to meditate and come home and be present, because it's real. You can grab onto it, right? And thoughts often, they can be great guides, but it's so what happens with more and more meditations, your thoughts just subside, and it's just the flowing presence of being here. And it's it's also a great way when you're going through something in your life which is happening all the time. It's a bit like a life jacket, And so what I would do is ramp up my meditations through tough things you face in life, right? Tragedies and things, losses, impermanence, and then it just always helps. But on a daily level, it helps too. It's just that word dukkha, suffering. It's kind of part of our lives. We have suffering in our lives, And sometimes it's, oh, this is kind of a, remember we would talk about it's a dukkha day. It's kind of a, just feeling bad that day, grumpy, unhappy, but it changes. It's a normal, it's inherent to our nature to have suffering.
And so I suppose that's comforting to know that that too is just temporary.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah. That's what's so beautiful about that, is, that suffering is part of our, dukkha is part of our lives. Sounds a little bit paradoxical, but.
Can you, I know this is weird, can you hear messages that help you in life? Perhaps from the other side, like to be that present? Can you access something that when your mind is not peaceful?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, can you say it again? Do you mind?
Can you access, I don't want to say the other side because that might be the wrong wording here, but can you get messages
Okay.
about your life?
Okay.
Clarity?
So the question is, can you get messages from other sources, potentially the other side, as you're meditating? Do you want to address that, John?
Well, I find it when you're in a deep state of meditation, very clear, voices will come that will be kind of the right thing to do, because you're so calm and you're now you're accessing your subconscious and your unconscious mind more, right? Because you're just laser focused and you're there, and it'll be things like everything's okay. That's often what will happen. Everything's okay, or it'll be something. It'll be a sign. There'll be a sign, something that will kind of be indicating to you what to do, and you kind of know. So that I don't. So where that is, that's kind of like primordial presence, or sometimes people use the word presence, which is kind of, then you start to get into spiritual, because there's a spiritual element, and that space that's free from thought, that's there, it can tell you things, and then it depends on where it comes from and your beliefs, and But that's kind of, again, the miracle. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book, a Vietnamese guy talked about the miracle of mindfulness. And I have to say, it's very true. And the miracle is that just from being present and calm and focused for a sustained period of time, something about that solves the problem. I don't know, it doesn't always solve the problem, but it it starts to kind of erode and evaporate. And I don't know what that is. There is something kind of magical when you're flowing in a state of being present. And it's nothing special. It's sometimes they use the word mundane, but things, you get answers to things. And,
Like with your son and the medication. So
yeah.
That's really powerful, what you said.
Yeah, or letting the emotions flow, let everything, connecting with them, and then letting go, letting be, letting go. And that's a big one, is letting go. It's letting go. And it was just interesting because I was nervous meditating. And the meditating I had
Here today?
just kind of nervous sitting here. And and I was, I just had to calm that down. And it just eventually got calm, and then everything was okay.
And you had a question?
Well, I like what you said there, John. You did talk about the presence, because that's something that I guess meditation somehow will make that a part of our makeup, our being. and then you kind of just pushed it off, like you say, well, nothing too special about that, feeling the presence. Well, the presences are, well, I always say God is all there is. So the presence is something that where we realize that connection, we experience it, we live it sometimes, as long as we stay on track. And the unfortunate thing about our mind is our mind goes all over the place. It's like that fly we were talking about. There's no real, I guess you could say, discipline to it. And of course, we have to keep an eye on it so that the mind doesn't take us off track. Mm-hmm. And I find that my other point about meditation is that we stay out of the mind. We don't think, and by not thinking, we become focused. It seems like a contradiction.
Yeah.
And but by not thinking, we feel the presence, and I think that's one of the advantages of meditation. And I had a question about meditation. Yeah. So you said a lot of times in your experiences that things just cleared up. They just got better. And I guess part of it is that, let go of God. We get out of the way. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the big things about meditation. So I was just going to ask you whether you felt that was a key to a lot of the, I guess you could say, the good times, the peacefulness that you experienced in life.
Getting out of the way. Yeah.
It's something that you've been with. You're quite fortunate that you started early.
Yeah.
and you practice that. I find it's a little bit tricky trying to meditate. That's my other question is, how can you stay on track? And it's kind of like come and go. And I try to use the breath as an anchor. And I'll think of the breath, and then of course the thought comes in.
Yeah.
So then I keep on going back and forth, and then before I know it, the half hour is up. So I said, well, I guess I've done my meditation. So my other question is, how do we get this to work for us? Because, judging from some of your experiences, it just seemed to solve a lot of the problems that we come across, day in and day out.
So,
do you want to repeat the question?
No, you're just kidding.
go ahead, Joyce.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, so, well, you just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. Don't have expectations in your meditation. And like you say, letting go, let God, believing that there's something there's a presence that's behind your thoughts, and then just letting it happen. Like I found the best. Well, you have to focus in the beginning. You have to.
Oh, that's part of my makeup. It's part of my life.
I didn't understand that last part.
Something with those thoughts. What do we say?
Oh, right. Yeah. You don't do anything with the thoughts. Non-doing. No, don't do anything. Let it happen. So I noticed an example, like Monday morning, I try to meditate every day, and not always, but Monday morning, wow, it was just a explosion of thoughts. Then I learned to let that happen. I had a lot to think about, a lot of planning. I just had to do it, so that happened. And then I realized that was a good way for meditation. Once you're concentrated, let it happen. And it's just letting go. So it's kind of non-doing a bit. Yeah. So the thoughts are fine. They're okay. It's all okay because it's happening. But you got to you got to be aware of your thoughts and keep coming back to your anchor. If you're not stable enough and not focused enough, and then you start to see that the thoughts come and go, and then they're actually they're not very helpful usually. But then through awareness, you start seeing there's other components, emotions, and that some of these thoughts they're real, and you know it when you're aware. And that partly answers your question, I think.
I'm going to just jump in here with one little suggestion. I don't know if you've ever done counting when you do like counting your breath, but I remember I used to do counting, try to count to 10. So try inhale, exhale, and I try to stay really focused on my breath, but counting it. And I would try to get to 10, and I couldn't get to 10. And then I said to my son, we were having a conversation, and I said, like, do you get to 10? This is when he was a monk for this year. And he said, no, Mom, you just go to 3. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, this has been a delight. Just to respect the time, maybe we could end the evening if you might share a take-home message for the crowd here in terms of relationships. Very small.
Small ask.
So what take-home could you suggest to the group here in terms of what can they use in their relationships that would be helpful from a mindfulness perspective?
Well, I said kind of mine before, like it's a perfect opportunity to practice with that person. You're a key person in the relationship. Just always view it as an opportunity to practice, like, and view difficulties an opportunity to get better at it, better and be more present. It's a perfect opportunity. What's the expression? Fodder for the expression.
Oh,
grist
for the mill.
Grist for the mill.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is a really good thing to view, to think, okay, this is tough. This is whatever's happening that's really disturbing you. That's how you will rise above it, by just being aware of it and focusing on it. And actually you start
Almost welcoming it.
Yeah, and we all know that because we've all been through difficult things where we have gotten through it, and you kind of feel you're better for it, usually. Yeah.
And I would say that the right speech, the question that you asked, I find that really helpful for me in a relationship. And so oftentimes it's like, what is the right time? Mm-hmm. And so I'll just use a really mundane example, like let's say that John doesn't specifically clean peanut butter off of the knife after he uses it. Maybe this is theoretical, I don't know.
That one's your problem.
And so sometimes, John's upset about something, and it's like, is that the time really where I need to remind him about the peanut butter on the knife? Like, no. I think actually what I should do is just collect all the dirty knives and put them. But anyway, but it is looking at the timing of things, and it's like, is this just something I can let go, or if I do need to speak about it, what are the right words to use about this? What's inflammatory? What's helpful? And so for me, the right speech is really an anchor, and I think we all kind of know what we're talking about without specifically reading about it. Yeah.
And part of that is one of the Eightfold Paths is right intention.
Yeah.
Like, where are you coming from?
Yeah.
What's your intention here, really? It's a very good question. What's your attitude?
So this has been an absolute delight. It's very rare where we have an opportunity. You come to talks here and people just talk. But what's really been quite unique about this evening is the vulnerability and sharing your personal journey. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's really a tremendous merit in doing that, and tremendous value in seeing how your path through this path has evolved with that. So thank you so much. This was unbelievable delight. So just to finish off, you guys are really a tremendous segue, because on April 16th, who is going to present here?
Don't know.
Yes, you do.
Do I?
Oh.
Shirley Johansson.
Oh, Get Out.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's what makes it so.
Really, that's so fun.
So on April 16th, which is our next time, Jayanta, or Shirley Johansson, is going to be talking on cultivating sati. So sati, S-A-T-I, was the original Pali word for what was then interpreted as mindfulness. So this is really going to be a really interesting discussion about what sati truly is, historically, independent of our modern day contemporary understanding of mindfulness. So I think this is really going to be a delight to learn about that.
That's great.
I would ask if you wouldn't mind piling your chairs 8 high, and we use that red lifter. Someone knows what to do, has been here before. We're going to put the chairs back. And one last thing is that we offer these evenings freely. None of the speakers get paid, none of the organizers get paid, but we do have expenses related to hall rental, Zoom membership, meetup membership, etc., etc. So if you feel that you can, a donation of $10 to $20 would be greatly appreciated. There's a basket back there, there's a QR code. You can go online and donate that way, or whatever you feel is appropriate for you to offer. So thank you very much. It's been a great, great evening. Thank you, John and Joyce. We'll have to have
And
you
thank
guys
you,
back
Phil.
again.
Thank you very much for organizing this, always.
Thank
Really,
you.
yeah.
Thank you. Joyce, can you turn the